Hello everyone, and welcome back to English Insider. I'm Sarah, and today we have an inspiring story for you titled Reading Practice, Improve Your Speaking in English, Graded Reader. This is the story of Sarah. She didn't grow up with much money. Every morning, Sarah, along with her brothers, would help their father. They worked before school, cutting mangoes to earn a little bit of money. That was their routine, their job. They worked hard even though they were just kids. At noon, they would go home and then head off to school. Every day was the same. No rest, no break. They were often tired, but they knew one important thing. School was crucial. At school, many other children had money. They could buy snacks and drinks, things Sarah and her brothers couldn't afford. They would just watch. Sometimes they felt sad, and sometimes they even felt angry, but they never stopped going to school. One day, Sarah's brother asked, "Why don't we just stay home and work instead?" Sarah didn't know how to respond, but then their father answered. He said, "Because I didn't have this chance, but you do, and I will give it to you, even if I have to work twice as hard." That moment had a profound impact on Sarah. She thought, maybe this life isn't forever. Maybe one day things can get better. But could they? Could a poor girl with no money, often not enough food, and no extra help, truly change her life? Sarah didn't know for sure, not yet. All she knew was one thing: she had to try. But would her efforts be enough? School eventually finished, and Sarah completed high school. She was the first in her family to achieve this, and they were all incredibly happy. But then, a realization hit her hard. She had no plan, no job lined up, no money, and no clear idea of what to do next. Sarah started looking for work every day. She asked friends, she asked neighbors, she walked to different offices, waited patiently, and hoped for an opportunity. But nothing materialized. No calls, no replies, just silence. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah began to worry. She wondered, maybe this is it. Maybe this is my future. No work, no money, just waiting. Her father continued to work, still cutting mangoes, and her brothers helped too. Sarah desperately wanted to contribute, but she couldn't find any employment. She felt utterly useless. One night, Sarah overheard her parents talking. Her mom said, "She tries so hard. Why doesn't anyone give her a chance?" Her father replied with unwavering belief, "Her time will come. I believe it." The next day, Sarah woke up and something felt different. She received a message. A small company was looking for some help. They wanted someone to assist the accountant. Just an assistant, nothing grand, but it was something. Sarah said yes immediately without hesitation. However, she was also scared. She had no prior experience and wasn't sure if she was good enough. What if she failed? What if they said, "You are not ready"? But she went anyway, because sometimes you can't wait to feel perfectly ready. You just have to take the leap. But was it the right decision? On her first day at work, Sarah was understandably nervous. She didn't know what to expect, having never worked in an office environment before. Everything felt new and somewhat overwhelming. She sat at a small desk. The accountant handed her some papers and said, "Check these numbers, then organize them." That was it. That was her job. Sarah didn't understand everything at first, but she tried her best. She made mistakes, quite a few, but she learned from each one. Every day brought new knowledge. After a few weeks, the accountant said to her, "You're doing well." Sarah smiled. It was a small compliment, but it meant the world to her. Months passed, and Sarah started taking on more responsibilities. She helped with reports, assisted with payments, answered phones, and interacted with clients. She was no longer just an assistant. She was growing in her role, quietly and steadily. Something within her was changing. She started to truly believe in her capabilities. And something unexpected happened. The accountant left the company. Sarah thought they would hire someone new, but they didn't. The manager called her into his office. He said, "Can you take over the position? You know how everything works now." Sarah could hardly believe it. Her in charge? She said yes. She was still a little afraid, but she knew she had to seize this opportunity. And that's how Sarah became the treasurer of the company. She was still quite young, but she was working with numbers, handling significant responsibility, and earning respect and trust. How parents were incredibly proud. Sarah started sending them money every month. It wasn't a large amount, but it helped them. They never asked for anything, but Sarah wanted to give back, to reciprocate the sacrifices they had made for her. 4 years passed. Sarah enjoyed her job, but she felt ready for something more challenging. She applied to a bigger national company that produced dairy products, a well-known organization. Sarah honestly didn't think she would get the job, but she received an interview, then a second one. Finally, they offered her a position on the team as an internal auditor. It was a significant step up, a major change. The office was much larger, and the work was more demanding. But Sarah felt prepared. She learned new systems, met new colleagues, traveled to other cities for work, reviewed reports, identified errors, and made recommendations. She worked longer hours, but she wasn't overly tired. She was growing professionally once again. One day, a coworker asked her, "How did you get your start?" Sarah replied simply, "Cutting mangoes." Her coworker laughed, thinking she was joking, but Sarah wasn't. That was her true beginning. And then another unexpected event occurred. Sarah met someone special, a person from the United States. They started talking, then they started making plans. Big plans. Could this new relationship change everything? He was kind, respectful, and a great listener. He lived in the United States. At first, their conversations were casual, but the more they talked, the more they dreamed of a future together. He eventually asked, "Do you want to start a life together?" And Sarah said, yes. They got married, and Sarah's life changed rapidly. She left her job, her country, and everything she had ever known. It was a difficult transition, but Sarah felt ready for a new chapter. She wasn't afraid of starting over from scratch. She had done it before. When Sarah arrived in the United States, everything was different. The language, the people, the culture. Her English wasn't very strong, and she often felt lost and small. She wanted to cry at times, but then she remembered her father's words, "Never stop learning." Sarah started learning English little by little. She watched videos, listened to conversations, repeated words, and made mistakes, but she persisted. She told herself, "You learned accounting. You learned how to work hard. Now you will learn English too." Months passed, and then something wonderful happened. Sarah's sister, who also lived in the United States, called her with exciting news. "I'm doing something important," she said. "I'm helping Mom and Dad come here." Sarah couldn't believe it. Her parents in the U.S.? Was it really possible? Her sister was diligently filling out forms and navigating the immigration process. It took time, but one day she finally said, "It's done. They're coming." Sarah waited with anticipation, counting down the days. She imagines them here, her parents, the same people who had worked tirelessly, cutting mangoes, who had given their children everything. They were coming to a place where they wouldn't have to struggle anymore. And then the day arrived. Sarah saw them again, but now in a new world. They didn't need to worry about anything. They were safe, comfortable, and finally resting after so many years of hard work. Sarah couldn't help but ask herself, is this real? Is this really my life now? And then something else happened, something unexpected. Her parents looked at her and said, "We are so proud of you. You made it." Those words deeply touched Sarah. She didn't necessarily feel strong or powerful. She just felt incredibly thankful. But her story wasn't over yet, because something was about to occur that would change her purpose forever. Sarah thought her story was complete. She believed she had reached her goal. Her parents were safe. Her family was happy. And she was living in the U.S. Life was good. But then a strange feeling crept in. One day, she woke up with a question in her mind. Is this really all I want? She had enough money to live comfortably, and she had peace. But something inside her felt missing. She couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Days passed, and Sarah tried to ignore the question, but it kept resurfacing. Then, one day in a store, she overheard a woman speaking Spanish, trying to help her child learn English. The child seemed confused and scared because she didn't understand. The mother prompted her to say, "Thank you," and the little girl repeated, "Thank you." In that moment, Sarah vividly remembered herself years ago, struggling to speak, trying to understand, feeling small and alone. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She thought, maybe I didn't come here only to live a better life. Maybe I came here to help others too. She started sharing her story with people at church, at work, and online. She talked about the mangoes, about school, about her father's sacrifices, and about her own journey of learning. And something amazing happened. People listened, they cried, and they said thank you. I needed to hear this. Sarah hadn't expected such a reaction. She wasn't famous or rich, but people connected with her story because it was real. And one girl approached her and said, "I want to learn English. Can you help me?" Sarah said yes, even though she wasn't entirely sure how. She started teaching the girl simple words, then short phrases, then sentences. The girl said, "You make it so easy. I feel brave when I learn with you." That was the turning point, a twist in her journey. Sarah understood that her life wasn't solely about what she had gained, but about what she could give back. She started teaching more people, immigrants, workers, mothers, fathers, people just like her, who had come to the U.S. with dreams, but without the language. And every time she taught, she felt a sense of purpose. She felt truly alive. So now, Sarah asks herself a new question. What if her story isn't just a personal narrative? What if it's a tool? Maybe her past experiences, the struggles she overcame, aren't something to forget, but rather the key to helping others unlock their own futures. And just when she thought her journey was complete, another surprise was waiting. Sarah sits down, reflecting on everything that has happened. Sometimes she still wonders, is this really my life? She remembers the mangoes, the heat, the constant feeling of having no money or enough food at school, no extra help, just dreams. And now, she teaches, she helps others learn English. She supports people who feel lost, just as she once did. She shares her story, and they listen, not because she is special, but because they see themselves in her experiences. Many people ask her, "How did you do it?" Sarah doesn't attribute it to magic or luck. She says, "I didn't give up, I didn't stop learning, and I never forgot where I came from." Her father used to say, "The world is hard, but your mind is strong." She didn't fully grasp the meaning of those words as a child, but now she does. They were poor, but they had courage. They didn't have much materially, but they had an abundance of love. They worked hard, they studied diligently, and they believed in a better future. Today, Sarah's parents live peacefully, without needing anything, as she and her siblings take care of them. They are not rich, but they are free, and that is everything. But there's something more. Helping others has become Sarah's new, even bigger dream. She doesn't just want to live a good life. She wants to empower others to build their own. Every student she teaches is a reminder of who she was and who she still is. Sometimes her students say, "I'm too old to learn." Sarah responds, "I started over in a new country with no English. If I did it, so can you." Sometimes they say, "I don't have time." She advises, "Make small pockets of time, 1 word a day, 1 step at a time." And sometimes they say, "I feel alone." Sarah reassures them, "You are not alone. I am here. We are many, and we don't give up." Now, Sarah understands the real dream isn't just to escape poverty. The real dream is to rise and then reach back to lift others too. So she will keep teaching. She will keep sharing her story, because maybe, just maybe, her voice isn't only her own. It is the voice of every child who once had nothing and chose to believe in something more. Sometimes, Sarah reflects on her past and asks herself, what if I had given up? What if I had stopped trying? Maybe she would still be there, cutting mangoes, with no future prospects. But she didn't stop. She didn't run away. She didn't complain. She believed. She worked hard. She waited patiently. And now, here she is. Not because she was the best or the luckiest, but because she made a choice. And now, Sarah wants to say something to you. You can change your life, even if you are facing poverty, even if you are scared, even if no one else believes in you. You can start small, you can grow, and you can become more than you ever imagined. But you must do one thing. Never stop, because the dream isn't just for the rich. The dream is for the brave. And maybe, just maybe, you are braver than you think.